Hello everyone, welcome back to Black Heaven, a necromantic dating sim. Let's go ahead and continue on with Izaki's past. You feel cool air blow over your face, then smell the scent of perfume and fragrant tea leaves. You open your eyes and find yourself standing in Hatsu's dojo again. Gathered around a low mahogany table, in the center of the room is a group of 7 people. Izaki, her parents, Mistress Hatsu, and 3 people you don't recognize. 2 of the strangers are a man and a woman in their late 40s, and the third, you guess, is their son, aged about 20 or so. Everyone is dressed in fashionable, opulent clothing except for Izagi and Hatsu. They're dressed in their martial arts outfits. Everyone is strangely silent, and he knows that all eyes are locked on Izagi. Izagi stands up slowly and bows to the table, then crouches down and gracefully reaches toward the center of the table. You can see a large bowl-shaped tea kettle in the center, and you realize that everyone has an empty cup in front of them. It's a tea ceremony. You walk around the outside of the table, watching Izagi deftly lift the heavy kettle and cradle it against her body. She then begins crouching down next to each guest. She rests her weight on one knee as she leans slightly forward, then tips the kettle forward to fill the cups. One of her hands grips the handle of the kettle, and the other rests lightly on the spout. She uses the latter to tip the kettle, all while the former keeps it hovering at exactly the same height above the table. The eyes of the guests follow every move she makes, and can feel the tension in the air. One wrong move and everyone sees. So this is what she was talking about when she told me about dreading tea ceremonies. Izagi fills the first 2 cups, which belong to her mother and father, then makes her way to Hatsu, who slides herself out of the way to allow Izagi easier access to her cup. Izagi crouches down and fills the cup, cutting out the stream from the spout at the exact moment the tea reaches halfway up the side. She does the same when she pours for the older man. But when she crouches down to fill his wife's, the hand on the spout tips the kettle slightly too fast, causing steaming hot tea to splash over the rim of the cup. Careful! I'm sorry. Izagi lifts away the kettle and sets it down in the center again, then grabs a napkin and quickly dabs up the spots of tea on the table. She folds up the soiled napkin and tucks it under the table, then bows her head to the woman. Please forgive me. You're forgiven, Miss Ito. Izagi raises her head and nods. Thank you, Mrs. Funari. Izagi turns the kettle again and begins to reach for it, but a voice from the other side of the table stops her. No. Izagi turns and looks toward her father. His face is cold and stern, and his mouth is set in a slight grimace. Again. Correctly. He reaches across the table, lifts the top of the kettle, and pours his cup into the vessel. Izagi's mother does the same, and soon everyone else follows suit. Once all of the cups have been emptied back into the kettle, Izagi's father looks at her and gestures to the table. Begin. Izagi stands up and returns to her father's side. She crouches down, reaches for the kettle, and lifts it once more. You watch her fill his cup again, then her mother's. Her face is blank, but you can see her eyes concentrating on her hands. She stands up and then crouches down to fill Hatsu's cup next. You see the slightest bit of trembling in the arm holding the kettle. That thing must weigh 10 pounds. Just got to pour out about an ounce of tea. Izagi once again manages to fill Hatsu's cup halfway. She moves to Mr. Funari and pours out almost 3/4 of cup before she lifts the spout. It's fine. Izagi bows her head, then moves to Mrs. Funari. She tilts the kettle forward, but not enough. No tea pours out of the spout. She tilts it slightly more, and then a thin stream trickles out. When it fills the cup halfway, she tilts it back and moves to the last guest, the young man. Izagi crouches down next to him and leans forward slightly to reach his cup. You see his eyes shift to glance at Izagi's chest, which is an inch or two away from him. Izagi tilts the kettle forward and fills his son's cup smoothly. However, she seems to notice him cough, shift in the seat, and try to steal a glance down the folds of her shirt. Izagi leans back, stands up, and returns her place at the table, where she fills her cup without incident. She sits the kettle back down in the center of the table, then settles in her seat. Without a word, everyone bows their heads, then picks up their cups and raises them. After holding them in the air for a few seconds, they lower their cups to their lips and silently drink. He watches each person then silently places their cup on the table again, taking care not to make a sound as the porcelain touches the wood. Once everyone has set down their cups, you see them all relax. As if a spell has been broken, they begin to cough, shift in the seats, and sigh. It's a beautiful night, isn't it? Yes, quite temperate. It's always as mild this time of year, Mr. Satsu. Oh, not usually. I think we've gotten quite lucky. Do you always conduct your school in the open air? When I can, I find that the breeze invigorates students, as does the cold. I see. You'll have to forgive me, but can you remind me of your school's specialty? I'm afraid I can't recall. Certainly. Here, I train my students in the Western variant of Yuza, also known as Karzi boxing, which I learned as a student of Master Tirgon at Itsan Academy. The emphasis is on balancing the more aggressive style of striking and movement with a flexible but unyielding stance. Flexible but unyielding? Isn't that a contradiction? Not at all. A tree may bend in the wind, but its roots keep it from yielding, and so the stance keeps the practitioner rooted to the ground, for it is the ground that gives the body power. I'm afraid I'd have to see it to understand. I would be more than happy to give a demonstration. Mrs. Funari turns to her son and smiles. What about you, Otto? You've been training your martial arts quite heavily lately. Would you like to take part in Mr. Tatsu's demonstration? If I may interject. All eyes turn to Izagi's mother. Izagi has been regaling us with everything she's learned over the past year. I would like to see her demonstrate what she has learned against someone her age. Hatsu is quiet for a moment, then looks at Izagi. I think that would be appropriate. Izagi looks at her mother, then at Otto. Her expression is impassive. I'd be willing to spar with Otto. I would too. I'll admit I'm curious actually. I've heard a lot about Mistress Hatsu's school. Very well then, I will officiate. Both of you, please stand up and follow me. Hatsu gets up from her cushion and walks a few feet away from the table so that both Izagi's and Ato's parents have a clear view. Izagi and Ato stand about 15 feet apart, with Hatsu between them. We shall use the sparring rules of my dojo. No striking at the eyes or between the legs. There will be no breaking of fingers or strangleholds. A participant may signal to stop by saying the word peace, or by tapping their leg 3 times with their hand. I may stop the match at any time if I feel that it is appropriate to do so. Are these terms acceptable to the parents of both parties? Both sets of parents nod their assent. Very well. Ready yourselves. Hatsu glances at both duelists, allows a moment to pass, then steps back. Begin. Ato rises onto the balls of his feet and begins to bounce from one leg to the other, his fist raised. His posture and stance are rudimentary, but his confidence and athleticism seep through every move he makes. Izagi smoothly slips into her stance next, with her back knee bent and all of her weight on that leg. Meanwhile, her front foot swoops forward and barely touches the floor. Her hands rise and you see that her fingers are held straight and close together. You shiver as you watch her. She's already got that cold, sharp grace you remember from Mitsun. Izagi takes a step forward and eases her weight down on her other leg. She moves slowly and easily, and it reminds you of a cat getting itself ready to strike. Ato inches forward and throws a jab to test Izagi's reaction, but she doesn't move. He throws another one, closer this time. Izagi reigns perfectly still. Ato keeps bouncing on the balls of his feet, feinting to left and right. It's as if he's unsure how to breach Izagi's defense. Then, in a swirl of dark hair, Izagi shifts her weight onto her front foot and crouches down so her fingertips rest on the floor. She swoops her back leg outward and spins around, catching Ato's shin. He immediately collapses as one foot is swept out from underneath him and hits the floor with a thud. Izagi rises and takes up her stance again. Her eyes closely watch Ato as he gets up and brushes himself off. They can't, but you don't, detect any tension in her body. She seems perfectly relaxed. Ato raises his fist again and glances over at the table, where his parents are watching silently. The moment he takes his eyes off Izagi, however, she lunges forward and hits his chest hard with a palm strike. He reels back, and Izagi advances. As she rushes in to take advantage of his surprise, Ato plants his back foot and twists his body to deliver a kick to Izagi's midsection. The kick is clumsy and sends Ato to his hands and knees, but it drives back Izagi and gives him enough time to get to his feet again. He charges in and starts throwing out a barrage of short jabs, and Izagi raises both arms to shield her face. After a few seconds of weathering Ato's punches, Izagi spots an opening and launches both of her arms forward at the same time. One of her arms is straight, while the other is bent, as if acting like a shield. Her straight punch slips past Ato's defenses and lands cleanly on his nose, sending a small spatter of blood across his shirt. Oh! Ah! Ato steps back and holds his nose. Natsu steps between him and Izagi. Hold! Izagi stands up and lowers her arms. Sorry. I think that's enough. No, wait, just a little more. Hatsu looks toward Mrs. Funari, who sighs. If you say so. God, your shirt will be ruined. Ato wipes his nose, leaving a smear of blood on his arm. He shakes his head and takes a deep breath through his mouth, then raises his fist. Izagi does the same. However, when Izagi takes up her stance, Ato doesn't return to his bouncing, balls of the feet style. Hatsu steps out of the way and swipes her arm between the two of them, and Ato immediately advances. Izagi simply lets him come closer, then lashes out with her lead leg. Her foot finds his shin, and he's forced to stop advancing. Ato circles Izagi, searching for a weak spot, and she watches him as she slowly rotates herself in place. You see a line of blood drip down Ato's upper lip, and watch him glance down at it. He lets a knuckle of his backhand staunch the flow, then glances up at Izagi. Ato lifts his bloody fist away from his nose, and takes a lunge at Izagi, which causes her to instinctively step forward to try to counter it. As soon as she realizes that it was a feint, Ato has already stepped deep to her right side and thrown a jab with his lead hand. Izagi barely manages to deflect it, but her other arm is unable to stop his second punch, while it catches her squarely on the jaw. Izagi takes 2 steps back as she recovers from the strike, then lifts her hand to touch her cheek. Her fingertips come away with fresh blood smeared from Ato's knuckle. Ato grins at Izagi and begins bouncing his feet again, his fist held close to his face. Izagi looks at the blood on her fingers and makes a disgusted sound. She looks at Hatsu, gazes back at her stoically. Can't stand the sight of blood? It's only mine. Izagi sneers and begins striding toward Ato. She seems to have abandoned her stance, and her arms swing at her sides. As soon as she comes within range of Ato's fists, he throws out the jab, then a strike from his backhand. Both are aimed at Izagi's face. She dodges both fluidly and walks even closer until her face is inches from his. You see her raise her right hand and place her fingertips on his sternum, and you immediately know what's about to happen. Izagi plants her feet and throws her whole shoulder into her punch, which lifts Ato off his feet and sends him flying backwards. As soon as the strike lands, you hear a sickening snapping sound as one of his bones breaks. He crashes to the floor and immediately curls into fetal position, screaming and moaning. His parents rush over to him and begin trying to help him sit up, but Hatsu stops them. She kneels next to Ato and gently prods his sternum, which makes him yelp in pain. His sternum is fractured. I can set the bone, but we need to act quickly. Help me carry him. Support his back. We'll take him to my quarters. Hatsu and Ato's parents quickly carry him out of the dojo, leaving Izagi standing in the center of the room. Izagi stares at the doorway and you see her parents rise to their feet. Izagi's father walks up to her, and Izagi slowly turns to look at him. He inhales slowly, breathes out, and then closes his eyes and shakes his head. Without another word, he walks out the door to the dojo, disappearing into the night. As soon as he's gone, Izagi's mother strides up to her and slaps her across the face. Izagi recoils, but her mother slaps her again. Is this why I let you come here? Is this what you want to do? Izagi raises her hand to cover her face, but her mother pulls him aside and continues to slap at her. You were supposed to learn discipline. You were supposed to learn how to be respectful, and you were not supposed to embarrass your family anymore. Izagi's mother delivers another stinging slap across Izagi's cheek, which has become bright red. Your father has been patient. I've been patient, and all that has been wasted on you. Izagi's mother steps back and rubs her hand, still glaring at Izagi. You have everything you could want, every opportunity, everything we can give you, but time and again, you throw it back in our faces. Izagi has raised her palm to her cheek again. You can see tears in her eyes. I was stupid to think I could change you by indulging you. You're selfish and you still throw tantrums like a child. I honestly don't thought you'd grown up more mature. Even a little. And now that we've let you follow your own whims and wishes, you throw it back in our faces just the same. I don't know what to do with you anymore. You see Izagi's shoulders start to hitch as her eyes clench shut. Well, Izagi, your parents are awful. Look at me. Izagi keeps her eyes closed but turns her face toward her mother. She tries to wipe her eyes, but it's useless. I said look at me. Izagi cracks open her eyes and looks at her mother through a film of tears. Every day I had to look at people like the Funari family and tell them that my only daughter is still useless, still hopeless. I can take that, you understand? I grit my teeth and bear that. But when I had to sit there and watch you botch another tea pouring and mortally wound another family son, a respectable family son, that I can't bear. I can't bear it, Izagi. Izagi's lips pull back as she grits her teeth and sobs. Now I'm going to have to endure a year's worth of gossip from every single one of her friends, asking what happened here tonight. And that's only if Atsu recovers. If you've crippled him, and Mistress Hatsu can't set his bones, we'll need to pay his parents enough restitution to keep them from cutting his ties with us. Can you understand how much you've done here tonight? You've hurt me, your father, Atto, your friends. You've hurt everyone because you can't keep yourself in check. Do you understand that? Nod your head if you understand. Izagi clutches her face in her hands and bends over, but her mother roughly grabs her shoulders and strains her up again. Do you understand? Izagi weakly nods her head, and her mother lets go of her and makes a disgusted sound. Izagi's voice is barely audible over her sobs, but she keeps trying to force the words out. He looked down my shirt while I was pouring tea, and he wiped blood on my face. Izagi's mother clicks her tongue and shakes her head with an exasperated look. And that's supposed to justify what you did? Izagi's mother leans her face close to Izagi's, which is still covered in tears. If you wanted to cry about your poor treatment, then you could have done it afterwards. Now I have to deal with this. Izagi's mother strains for robes and sighs, shaking her head again. She looks toward the open door to the dojo as if weighing whether she would follow her husband. You're going to apologize. You're going to beg them for forgiveness. If Otto wants to regain his honor in a duel, then he will let him win that duel. I don't care if he wipes blood on your face or if he breaks your leg. You will endure it. Just as I have endured this fucking nonsense of yours. Izagi's mother turns back to her with narrowed eyes. I've had enough of this. Do you hear me? You aren't going to be a martial artist. You aren't going to be a courtesan. You're not going to be a poet or a painter or any of that idiocy. You're going to do what I asked you to do and go to Itsan Academy, or you're not going to inherit anything from your father or I. Mistress Atsu, as inept as she is at teaching you how to control yourself, will at least be useful when she writes your recommendation letter there. And once you're there, I had better not hear a single word about an incident involving my daughter. You're going to be a scholar, and when you get back, you're going to take care of your father and I. And after I'm dead, God help me, you will not embarrass our family anymore. Izagi's mother takes a deep breath and strides toward the door to the dojo. After she's gone, Izagi collapses to her knees and lowers her head to the floor. letting the sobs rack her body. You catch the familiar smell of sweat, polished wood, and warm air. You open your eyes and find yourself in the dojo at Itsuan Academy, standing near the edge of the room. Lined up in front of you are students in their martial arts uniforms, all looking toward the front of the room. You walk closer to the front and find Izam standing there, looking as bored and haughty as always. Look down the line of students standing in the front row, and you spy Izagi near the end. Izam is going over the rules of conduct and instruction, so mostly tune them out. Instead, you walk up to Izagi. She has a fierce, determined expression, and she seems to be listening to every word Izam says. Just like my first day here. When Izam is done speaking, he waves a hand to dismiss the gathered students and send them to do their exercises. He wanders around, his eyes sweeping over the room until he sees Izagi. He walks up as she stretches and nods toward the enamel lotus pin on her belt. Initiate Ito. I would advise you to put that away. It's likely to get caught on something, and frivolous jewelry is not really something I'm fond of. Izagi stops stretching and bows to Izam, then turns. Apologies if I seem impertinent, sir, but this pin was given to me by Mistress Hatsu as a token of her confidence in me. It is my prized possession, and I told her I would wear it whenever I practiced my martial arts to remind me of her lessons. You see a sardonic smile spread across Izam's face. Mistress Hatsu. She was my student for a short time. I'm interested to know what vital lessons she taught you. The most important one was discipline and self-control. Izam lets out a barking laugh, cutting off Izaki. Self-control and discipline. She must have learned those somewhere else, because I never saw an ounce of either while she was here. Did your mistress ever tell you some of the things she did while she was a student at Itsuan? She did, and she told me that if I followed her example, she would come here herself and break my bones. Good. And to add to her warning, I'll give one of my own. Those who intend to pursue the art of physical augmentation here endure a much harder path than those who choose other specialties. I'm not only referring to the self-surgery required, though that is quite painful. I'm speaking about the expectations and the consequences of failing those expectations. I expect obedience from my students. I expect respect. And I expect each student to be honest with me about how serious their resolve is regarding their education here. I know the families of many of the students here. I know some of them personally, and they are frank with me about the prospects of their sons and daughters. Some students here are not accustomed to hardship and authority. They are the aristocrats, and they need to be broken in. Some simply view Itsuan as a social club, but studying is a necessary evil. They are the troublemakers, and they quickly learn how harsh things can be. Others have been preparing for this academy for their whole lives, and are enamored with the body's hidden secrets. Those are the true scholars, and they are the only ones who make it to the end of their tutelage for the mastery of the most immortal arts. When I met them, your parents expressed concern about your prospects, and so I will ask you, Initiate Ito, in which of these camps do you fall? Izagi silence for a few moments as she thinks. None, sir. Then how will I know what to expect from you? You can expect that I will come to class ready to learn from you, sir. You can expect me to put everything I have into your courses. I will do my best not to disappoint you, sir. Izan regards Izagi for a second, then nods. That will do, Initiate Ito. I would like you to keep wearing your lotus pin as a sign of this covenant that you made with me today, as well as a reminder of what Mistress Hatsu told you. If you forget, I will not hesitate to remind you. Now, Initiate Enoshi. Izan calls over another student, one who seems to be a little older than Izagi. She's wearing a red sash similar to Izan's, and she's extremely muscular. I remember her. That was the girl that Izagi didn't like. The one who broke her arms. You know. Initiate Ito. This is Initiate Enoshi, the top student in our martial arts classes. She'll be your partner for the coming months. Initiate Enoshi, begin by assessing your partner's stance and fundamentals. I'm under the impression that she has some familiarity with the basics of our form and style. Yes, sir. Very good. I'll leave you two to your work. Izan walks away, and Ino immediately crosses her arms. Hello, show me your stance. Izagi nods a little nervously and breathes in. She stands up straight, turns her toes outward, lifts her heels so that her toes point inward, then shifts her head, lead, foot, and body so that she's facing Ino. Sloppy. Excuse me? Your form is sloppy. You're too loose and relaxed. Your hands are too far apart. As she speaks, Ino roughly adjusts Izagi's hands, then pinches Izagi's sides to make her tense up and straighten her back slightly. I know that's how the form is supposed to be held in the beginning, but I'm already familiar with what I was trying to teach. I made small adjustments that Are you questioning me? Izagi opens her mouth, but hesitates. No, I'm not. Then do it like I tell you to. I don't care if you've had other training, I'm the senior student in this dojo, and that's the only thing that matters. Understood? Izagi exhales through her nose, clearly exasperated. She nods. I didn't ask for a nod. Yes or no? Do you understand? I understand. Alright, good. Now stand up and do your stance again. Izagi straightens up, then goes through steps to establish her stance. Her movements are stiff and mechanical, as if she's trying to emphasize each move. Ino watches her, staring intently at Izagi as she walks around her. You'll need to cut your hair. It'll only get in the way. I can't. I promised my parents that I will not cut it. You're not going to be able to spar with all that hanging from your head. I've gotten used to it. If you say so. Ino chuckles to herself and stops in front of Izagi. She leans forward and peers at her. Your hair is not the only thing that's going to get in the way. Ino taps her chest, and you see Izagi blush. I bet you're popular with the boys, huh? Izagi shakes her head. Huh, too bad. Punch. Izagi grimaces and throws out a straight punch. Again. Izagi retracts her arm and punches with the other. You notice that her shoulder barely moves. All the force of the punch comes from her elbow. Kick. Izagi lashes out with her front leg and delivers a low kick to the air in front of her. Come on, again. Izagi kicks again, harder this time. You wince as you think of what that kick would do to your leg. Show me the first form. The kata. Izagi gets up from her stance, brings her feet together, and starts reciting the movements of the first form kata. She holds her hands at her sides, then raises them up so her fists rest at her tips, with her elbows pointed back. Her fists open, and her hands dive through the air in front of her so that her arms cross. Her fingertips are pointed at the floor, leaving her arms in an X position. She rolls her wrists and her arms forward in the air until her fingers are pointed up. Her palms are near her face. It looks like she's carrying a basket in crossed arms. As Ino watches, she gives an annoyed grunt and rolls her eyes. You're too loose and flowy again. Every movement should be strong and deliberate. Do it again. Izagi shifts her jaw a little, but she stops and starts over. Halfway through the first part, Ino stops her again. No, like this. Ino takes up her stance, raises her fist so that the sides rest on her hips, then shoots forth both arms so that they cross, like a guillotine. You should pretend you're blocking a low kick with your arms. I know what it's meant to do. Really? Without warning, Ino steps forward and launches a low kick at Izagi's thigh. Izagi immediately slices downward with her arm, chopping Ino's leg and slowing it, but Ino's shin still impacts Izagi's side. Izagi immediately bends her knees and prepares for a counterattack, but Ino is already standing up and crossing her arms. See, I told you. I blocked it correctly. Your kick was too strong for my arm. That's a problem of conditioning, not... So you're going to be like that. What? Never admitting mistakes. It's a problem that a lot of new students have. You've been told your whole life that you're perfect. So when you screw up on your first day, it's... upsetting. Izagi grits her teeth and rubs her leg. That's not... I'm not making... Yeah. Let me try it again. That's not... I'm not making excuses. Ino sighs. You got a lot to learn, okay? Can you at least admit that? Yes. Good, that's a start. Now do the form properly so you can move on. Izagi breathes in through her nose, stands up straight, and begins again. Her arms shoot forward from her sides, crossing one another so that her palms are hovering above her knees. You can see her put real effort into the movement, as if she were blocking an invisible kick. However, you realize that her whole body is tense, making her stiff and rigid. Good, that's what I wanted. Keep going. Ino lets Izagi move through the rest of the kata, but you notice that her eyes are often drifting around the classroom, watching the other senior students. Izagi doesn't seem to notice. Her eyes are facing straight forward, like she's in a trance. When she finishes the kata and leaves her stance, she lets a long breath. How was that? Oh, it was okay. There's a few things you need to tighten, but I won't go into them now. Okay. Ino cracks her neck, then her knuckles. She gives Izagi an eager smile and takes a roll of linen from her pocket. Wrap up your hands. Wrap my hands? Why? We're going to spar. I don't want to break your fingers. Not this early, at least. Izagi catches the roll of linen and looks at Ino. What are the ground rules? Don't attack the eyes and no weapons. Everything else is fair game. Treat this like a real fight. Who will be the referee? I will. That's not right. If we're going all out, then how will we even know when to stop? I'll stop if you're on the ground and can't get up. But if I tell you to stop, just trust me, okay? I'm not gonna beat you up on your first day. Well, not that much. Izagi seems like she wants to say something, but instead she begins wrapping her hands. When she finishes tying the linen on both palms, she sets down the roll and takes up her stance. Ino does the same, and you realize for the first time how muscular her frame is. Your stance is still incorrect. Then prove me wrong. Ino grins. You refuse to learn. That's okay, I'm a good teacher. Start. Ino starts to advance toward Izagi, but Izagi sidesteps and begins to circle her. Izagi's hands are open, not closed in the fists, though her fingers are held close together. Ino takes a step toward Izagi, then another, and lunges forward and throws a punch at Izagi's left cheek. Izagi's arm shoots forward so that the top of her arm pushes against the inside of Ino's, derailing her punch. In an instant, Izagi is counter-attacking. She chops into Ino's neck with her extended arm, while her rear arm flies forward to punch Ino's face. Ino fends off the punch, but takes a blow to the neck. She grunts and you see her lead leg lift to the kick of Izagi's shin. Izagi senses the kick coming, steps forward and tries to keep it from getting any momentum by pressing her knee against Ino's inner thigh. Ino stumbles slightly, but manages to retreat a few steps back. You watch Izagi relentlessly advance, holding onto her initiative and weathering glancing blows as she presses the attack. The two of them begin to move around the dojo, forcing other students out of their way. Ino keeps trying to bring Izagi to a standstill by overwhelming her with short, intense barrages. Izagi either blocks them and smoothly counterattacks or simply endures the blows. Every step of the way, Izagi keeps trying to get closer to Ino, and Ino is forced to retreat farther and farther back. You notice that the dojo has gone very quiet. You glance around and see that everyone else in the dojo has stopped their drills and exercises to watch the two of them. They've almost traveled the full length of the dojo, and Ino's retreat is threatening to put her back against the far wall, near the stove. Finally, you see Ino manage to land a solid strike on Izagi's chin, which forces her to pause for a moment. Izagi rubs her chin, keeps one hand up in guard position, Ino stands across from her, panting and covered in sweat. By now, the two of them have been sparring for almost 2 minutes. You can see Izagi breathing hard, but she's not out of breath. She shifts her jaw, then raises her other hand into guard position. Are you satisfied? Ino sneers, exposing her teeth. No, I'm not. Here. Ino raises up her front leg so that she's balancing entirely on her rear foot. She raises both arms at her sides like unfurled wings. Her face and chest are all exposed, but you can tell there's something more going on. Some kind of trap. Izagi cautiously circles Ino, watching her raised leg intently. Ino's front foot is almost completely still. No shaking, no trembling. She looks like a strange statue, but her rising and falling chest betray the stillness of the rest of her body. Slowly, Ino crouches down on her rear leg. You see Izagi tense up, but not retreat. Suddenly, Ino springs forward, propelling her whole body forward with just one leg. She brings her other leg up to kick, and her foot arcs over Izagi's hands and narrowly misses her chin. Immediately after she lands, Ino is twisting and spinning, delivering a chain of roundhouse kicks at Izagi's side and head. Izagi manages to block most of them, but the sheer force of the kicks blows through her defenses and impacts her body. Still, Izagi refuses to budge from her spot, and you realize why. For this entire fight, she's been trying to get close to Ino, and now Ino's coming to her instead. Ino follows up her spinning kicks with a few finger jabs at Izagi's head. Izagi swats them away and throws a single punch into Ino's throat. Her knuckles connect with Ino's neck, and Ino suddenly grabs a windpipe and gasps. Izagi, meanwhile, stands there silently with her arms still outstretched. Ino seems to recover, clenches her teeth, and raises her front leg again, balancing on her rear foot. Izagi strides forward, unperturbed. When Ino lunges forward for another devastating kick, Izagi grabs her shin and throws her to the ground. I think that's enough. Ino rises to her knees and gets back up to her feet. It's not over until I say this. That's not honor. Ino interrupts Izagi by walking forward, feinting a punch, and then grabbing her hair with her other hand. Hey, that's illegal. Before she can react, Izagi's head is pulled down and rammed into Ino's rising knee. You hear Izagi choke and watch her collapse to her knees. Her hands fly to her face and she rests her forehead on the floor. Ino stands over her, still breathing hard. There. I told you your hair would get in the way. You hear Izagi grunt in pain, then watch her get to her feet shakily. Her hair parts and you see that she has a rapidly darkening black eye. You ready to keep going? I am. Izagi raises her hands and takes up her stance. Ino wets her lower lip and takes a deeper stance with most of her weight on her front leg, leaving her rear foot cocked back and ready to kick. Izagi advances inch by inch, pretends to take a deep step forward. Ino immediately begins to kick, but realizes it's a feint. Izagi sidesteps, and Ino is forced to reposition herself. Come on! Ino takes 2 large steps toward Izagi and tries to sweep away her hands with one arm. In that moment, Izagi lets both hands drop, slip underneath Ino's elbows. She steps forward, closer to her opponent. You see her right hand reach with splayed fingers toward Ino's ribs, and watch as her fingertips make contact. Oh no, Izagi, don't. You see Izagi's whole body tense as she prepares to throw herself forward. She lowers her head, flexes her legs, and raises her shoulders. Ino, meanwhile, is just now wrapping her hands around Izagi's shoulders, preparing for another strike with the knee. It won't be fast enough. You steel yourself for the sound of cracking bone and screaming, but it doesn't come. Izagi's hand is frozen on Ino's chest. You see Ino's hands force Izagi's torso downward, and her knee coming rocketing up to bury itself in Izagi's stomach. Izagi gags and goes limp, but Ino holds her up. You're too cocky. Ino lets go of Izagi, who slumps into the floor. She lies there unmoving for a few seconds, then lets out a wheezing cough. Master Izam briskly strides over and rolls Izagi onto her side, then stands up and looks at Ino. What was all that? A lesson. Initiate Ito was being impertinent, so I had to teach her that she doesn't know everything. And her impertinence was? She insisted on sparring with an incorrect stance. Ah, I see. Initiate Ito, is that correct? Izagi groans and sits up, holding her stomach. Her chin rests against her collarbone and her hair hangs in front of her face. Initiate Ito, I asked you a question. Have you already forgotten your promise to me? Izagi takes in a gasping breath and shakes her head. Good. Now, did you insist on using an incorrect stance during your sparring session? Izagi takes in another breath, swallows and nods. I see. In that case, I'll need that pin from you. Izam opens his palm and holds it in front of Izagi's face. You'll get it back when you show that you can make good on your promises.